Once there was a mighty warrior, a man who had won many battles and eventually rose to become a powerful king. But in a strange twist of fate, he was reborn into a new life, this time as a helpless baby. Even though he had started over, he still remembered everything from his past life. Now trapped in a small, weak body, he felt like a prisoner. The world around him was filled with powers he had never seen before, strange, mysterious abilities that fascinated him deeply. He knew he had to grow stronger quickly. In his memories, there was blood dripping from a sword while flames lit up a red sky. He remembered the moment he stood over a woman he had just killed, her lifeless body lying at his feet. That same man had once claimed the throne and crushed his enemies with ease. In another battle, he drove his sword through an opponent, declaring victory with confidence. Then warplanes filled the sky and dropped bombs across a city, causing endless explosions and terrified screams. The king stood watching, his cape blowing in the heat of the destruction. He believed he had become the most powerful ruler of all. Or perhaps he only used to be. In the present, he placed his hand on the glass of a display case that held his old crown. Deep inside, he mourned what he had lost. Suddenly, he was pulled into his own mind, like sinking into a deep ocean. As he drifted downward, he heard the voice of a child softly say, "Please." A beautiful green field appeared before him, and a single feather floated through the air. The child's voice spoke again, "In your new life, seek the light." And so the king was reborn as a baby. A man with a kind smile, Reynold, welcomed the newborn, and proudly said the child had his wife's hair color. The mother, Alice, happily noted the baby had Reynolds' eyes. They named the baby Arthur. Arthur, though now in a baby's body, still had the mind of a grown man. He looked around, confused, trying to figure out who these people were, until they both smiled warmly and told him they were his parents. That's when it truly hit him. He had been born again. After a lifetime of war and glory, Arthur now found himself as a tiny baby, unable to do anything for himself. The mother gently patted his back to help him burp, and he did, more by instinct than choice. He didn't understand everything that was happening, but he could tell that Alice and Reynold genuinely cared for him. They believed they were his real parents. Still, Arthur couldn't shake the fear. Being a baby with an adult's mind felt terrifying. When they placed him in the crib, he grabbed Reynolds' finger without meaning to. Reynold was thrilled, thinking his son was bonding with him, but Arthur knew it had just been a reflex. He felt even more frustrated when, instead of crying, he suddenly had to go to the bathroom. Again, something completely outside of his control. For someone who had once ruled as a mighty king, being a baby now truly felt like being locked in a prison. As if that wasn't already strange enough, he soon sees something even more unbelievable. While being carried outside in his mother's arms, he watches his father use magic in his hands to smash a rock with a single punch. A piece of the broken rock falls and hits his father on the head. Thankfully, his mother, Alice, quickly heals him with a magic spell. Seeing all of this, baby Arthur realizes that there are powerful abilities in this world that he doesn't fully understand yet, and that idea excites him. His father, Reynold, wears a gauntlet powered by magic and is strong enough to hunt even the most dangerous wild animals in the forest. When Arthur sees his father return from one of these hunts, he begins to think that knowledge is a powerful tool. So even as a baby, he starts paying close attention to everything around him. He notices that many people carry weapons, which suggests that this world can be dangerous. Because of that, people seem to train and grow stronger as early as possible. Arthur doesn't want to be left behind. Later, as Alice gently rocks him to sleep, Arthur reflects on how frustrating these early days have been. Still, he appreciates peaceful moments like this, something he rarely had in his past life, where enemies didn't always play fair. At least now he can sleep without worry. Life continues and Arthur reaches a new milestone. He learns how to crawl. One day, he crawls into his parents' room and sees himself in a mirror for the first time. His parents are overjoyed by every little thing he does. Meanwhile, Arthur is still getting used to being called by his new name, though it doesn't really bother him. At bedtime, Alice kisses him goodnight and places him in his crib. But instead of falling asleep, the curious little boy quietly climbs out like Rapunzel escaping from a tower on a mission. After struggling with his baby body for so long, he's finally getting better at moving around and taking control of his needs. While his mother is busy washing dishes, Arthur sneaks through the kitchen silently, careful not to make a sound. He opens a door and reaches his destination, the bookshelf. Just as he thought, this is where he could find what he was looking for, knowledge about the world he's now living in. One of the books tells him that the continent he's on is called Dikkin. It's divided into 3 main kingdoms: Darv, the underground home of dwarves; Eleanor, the forest land ruled by elves; and Sapin, the human kingdom where Arthur currently lives. Sapin is also the most populated. Like the country Arthur lived in during his past life, Sapin is a monarchy. But here, the throne is passed down by blood, not taken by force. Another book explains that this world is not as advanced as the one he came from, mainly because of magic. In this world, there is a special energy called mana. The ability to use it is usually inherited and only appears in about 1 out of every 100 people. There are 2 main ways to use mana. Augmenters use it to make their bodies stronger, faster, and more durable. Conjurers, on the other hand, can control and shape mana into magical spells. To use mana properly, a person needs to focus all the scattered mana in their body into something called a mana core. This process is what turns someone into a mage, and it usually starts during puberty or a little later. Arthur understood well the importance of becoming aware of the power inside him. To truly control and use it, he needed to focus that energy at the center of his being, his mana. Thankfully, the memories and knowledge from his past life as a king still lingered, and he intended to use them in this new life. During one of his quiet moments, he began meditating. Inside his mind, he entered a calm, empty space, and to his surprise, a small amount of mana began to gather between his tiny hands. Just as he was making progress, his mother Alice found him after searching the entire house. She gently scolded him, asking him not to scare her like that. But then her expression changed as she noticed something odd. Arthur froze, thinking she had caught him using mana, but in reality, she just noticed that he needed a diaper change. This moment reminded Arthur once again that his baby body was like a cage, and he needed to grow stronger to be free. The next day, Alice wrote in her diary, reflecting that it had already been 2 years since Arthur was born. She described him as cute, curious, and well-behaved, but one thing continued to bother her. He had never smiled. Outside, Reynold was teaching Arthur how to handle a stick like a sword. He was impressed with the boy's natural skill and called Alice to come watch. However, Alice wasn't pleased. She didn't like the idea of her little boy playing with anything that looked dangerous. After observing his parents for 2 years, Arthur started to understand the balance of power in the house. Or maybe he thought women rule the world here. Later, the family took a trip to the city. Alice said Arthur always seemed excited when they visited. As they walked through the busy streets, Arthur quietly observed everything. He studied the weapons on display to understand how advanced this society was. He noticed substances that didn't exist in his previous world and was amazed to see magic being used so openly. On the way home, as he napped on his mother's back, Arthur reflected on his life. Despite its limits, this new life wasn't so bad. His parents met all of his needs. He wondered if this warm, caring environment was what a family was supposed to feel like, something he had never truly experienced before. Alice, too, had been watching her son closely. She loved how his eyes lit up at the market and how he eagerly reached for books. She thought he might have inherited his adventurous spirit from Reynold. Still, deep down, she hoped he'd live a quiet and peaceful life. At sunrise the next day, Arthur watched his father practicing outside and admired him. Reynold shattered a rock again and proudly asked his son if he was impressed. Alice gently placed her hand on Arthur's shoulder and said the show wasn't that amazing, but things were about to get more exciting. Right then, Reynold threw a punch into the air, creating a powerful gust of wind. With a stomp, he sent a wave of wind through the ground. Arthur was amazed. Reynold was clearly an amplifier, a warrior who used mana to strengthen his body. Watching this made Arthur even more determined to train and get stronger himself. But his mother had other plans. It was nap time. Arthur, however, reached for the bookshelves, signaling he wanted a book. Alice told him no. It was time to sleep. But Arthur used his best innocent look, and it worked. Smiling, she handed him a book, and he began to meditate once more. Over the past 2 years, Arthur had studied a lot. The most valuable lesson he had learned was how to create a mana core, a central point in the body where scattered mana is collected and controlled. It had taken countless hours of focus and effort, but now his work was finally paying off. At last, he managed to gather the final piece of energy, and suddenly, an explosion rocked the house, destroying a large section of it. Outside, Reynold shielded Alice from falling debris, but got hurt in the process. Both parents rushed back inside. Reynold reached Arthur first, and what he saw left him speechless. His 3-year-old son was floating in midair, surrounded by glowing mana, smiling confidently. Arthur knew this moment marked his first true step toward power. But then parts of the ceiling started to collapse toward him. Panic set in. He couldn't die. Not now, not after all his hard work. Alice dived in and grabbed him just in time, while Reynold used all of his strength to push the heavy wood away. Safe in his mother's arms, Arthur looked up at her, realizing just how far his parents would go to protect him. Reynold asked if Arthur was okay, and Alice, with tears in her eyes, said yes. She held him close like he was the most precious thing in the world. Arthur didn't quite understand why she was crying. It reminded him of a duel he once fought in a past life, where the defeated boy was comforted by his parents. He didn't understand that kind of emotion back then, and he still didn't now. but somehow he felt it. And so for the first time in this new life, Arthur began to cry too. He clung tightly to his mother, starting to understand just a little what it meant to be loved. That marks the end of today's anime recap. If you enjoyed the video and want more of it, please support the channel by leaving a like and subscribe. Let's help us reach a current goal of 10K subscribers.